Hi everyone, and hello, welcome to this video. So just to recap from the last time, we basically left off with our height map, right? And this time we kind of want to do a bit of material on this terrain, and that is just apply some textures so that it actually looks good. And for that, we're going to need to learn about splat mapping, and I didn't prepare too much for this because this is fairly straightforward. This is splat map. And as you can see, it kinda, I have corresponding height map and then splat map. And what splat map does is it's just based on these colored regions, we're going to apply different textures. So what does that mean? So for example, for a blue channel, we could use some rocky texture, right? Because as you can see, these parts are really high. And then for the red texture, we can use maybe some dirt texture. And then for this greenish region, we can use grass texture. And how does this work? Well, actually, we just use 3 textures and then multiply them by these colors. And you're going to see how it works because it's very easy. So for start, you're probably going to need this map, which I'm going to leave in the link of the description of the video. Then dirt, grass, and as well as rock texture. I'm going to leave the description of the video and the credits as well, because I actually took those from Open Game Arts. Anyway, I'll just leave that. But we can start with it because it's very easy to do. It's not that hard. So we can just start with basically our shader. And that's going to be, if I could find it, I don't remember anymore where I left it. So let's just check here. We have textures, assets. Our shader is not here. Pipelines, we have pipelines. Am I missing it? Shaders, yeah, very well. So the closest we are is to this unlit shader. So I'm just going to copy it. Then we're going to create a new shader, which is going to be called terrain. WGSL. Let's copy it. And then we just need to modify it basically. And the fragment shader only, right? The vertex shader will remain the same. So in fragment shader, we're not going to have texture. We're going to have mixed texture. And mixed texture is going to be this texture or splat map. So it's going to be used for mixing. And then in our terrain, we're going to have mix sampler. And then we just for each of the channels, which is red, green, blue, you could use alpha as well. But we're not going to use alpha. We just need to create basically well, we need to add textures, and then we're going to use those textures. They're going to be multiplied by the channel of the splat map. So hang on with me. So red sampler. So we're going to need green and blue as well. 4, 5. Green. And then blue. So we're just going to add bindings here, no need to do anything special. Okay, now this is the tricky part. So we're going to have our mix value, which is just our texture sample. So we're going to use this texture sample. So we have mix texture, right? Then we have mix sampler and texture current. So that's fine. And then we have color. And now we're going to sample once again, but we're going to sample this red texture, red sampler, and then we just multiply it by our mix red, right? And here it gives me suggestions because it's kind of similar, right? We do it also for green, but we multiply by green component and then blue. And that's how you can mix actually. And this is called splat map or splatting. And you can just splat textures based on your mix value or your splat map value, which is this one, right? So yeah, I think that's very clear. It's very easy to do. So we can just continue with it, and then we just need to return the color, and we can multiply by vertex color. That's fine. So that's it. We just now need to create our material, which is going to be called terrain pipeline, I guess. And now, as usual, we just need to multiply a bunch of things and then we're done basically. So I'm just going to copy paste it lazily here. And then I have a typo here, so I'm just going to not inspect, rename, refactor this, rename to pipeline lowercase. Good. So we're just going to rename this as well, terrain. I use random pipeline, so once again I'm just going to rename this actually. It's Control RR. Okay. Here we go. Terrain render pipeline. Good. So we need to change a couple of things, which is mainly just dealing with the textures. So we call this texture bind group. I'm going to call it fragment. So we're just going to rename it fragment because it's in fragment shader. So I'm just going to rename it because we're going to need some other values, but more on that later. So this becomes basically mixed texture. Then we just need to add red, green, and blue. So we have red, we have green, and then we have blue as well. Good. We need to rename this. It's okay. So we're going to rename this to mixed texture. Oh, I did it to do this. Okay. So we need to create the exact same thing for red, green, and blue. So a lot of typing. Let's just do all of this. So what we're doing, we're just expanding this to take additional textures. So this is okay. How did I rename? Alright, mixed texture is now late because I renamed this first. I just want to have proper order here. Alright, good. So create resources. We don't have to do anything yet. Actually, we can just assign these textures to default texture. So let's do it here. Create bind group layouts. We don't do anything here. Texture. All right, we're going to rename this to fragment. So just find the layout that was for texture. So now we actually have 4 textures, so we can do this in a loop. So first of all, we need to change the count here, right? And then we can create a loop which goes from 0 to 8. And then less than 8, right? And then we just need to increment but not by 1, but actually by 2, right? Because we have 2 bindings. We have fragment and then we have texture view binding and then sample binding as well. So we can just say I. Here it's I as well. We just need to cast it because this is unsigned. This is okay. Then I plus 1 here on these entries for the sampler. And then we just need to cast this as well, but it's I plus 1. All right. And then this is wrong name on my side. So what was it called? So I'm just going to rename this to fragment. When I copied, hit leftovers, but just make sure to set entry count as well. So that was for layout, right? We're just laying out all of this. So first of all, texture, and then sampler. We just repeat it for 4 times. Why? because here, right, we have this group, then this for red, then for green, right, and then for blue as well. Good. Now that we changed the layout, we just need to change texture binding as well. So it's kind of similar here, right? We have this create texture binding, we just have 8, and then we have for loop, right? Same as this one. Okay, it gives me suggestions here, I +1, so this is good. And this is good as well. Okay, it actually won't work like this, right? Because here it cannot be default texture, right? It has to be mixed texture, red texture, blue texture, and then green texture as well. So we can just do an array here, textures, and then what we can do is just place our textures in array, the order matters, right? Because we're going to loop through them in a loop. Of course, it needs to be an array. And then we're incrementing here by 2, so we're going to use this index. We need another index, so I can just call it texture index, and it's 0 by default. So now this is okay, almost. So we're not using texture here, we're actually going to say texture index. Same here, and then we just need to increment index. So we don't need this. Just make sure that entry count here is 8 now. And we can rename this terrain. And it's called fragment bind group. But so what we're doing, we're just going, we're setting basically each of these textures to a binding, right? So we go, first loop is mixed texture, we increment by 2, right? Because we need to set up view, and then we need to set up sampler as well, right? As you can see here, texture view, texture sampler, increment texture index, then we're on the red texture, and here it's by 2. So here we're binding by index 2, by index 3 here, right? And then we're setting textures again. So it's very easy. So we just need to do all of this. I think this is fine. This is fine as well. I don't think we need to change anything else here. So we can actually probably can try to make use of it. So in our terrain object, I believe we had something like that. It's not this, it's actually terrain in the pipeline. We can set it here. So it's mixed texture. Of course, we're going to have to change the texture, right? Because this was height map, and we use height map here to read our geometry, to create our height geometry, right? So we're just going to rename this to height map texture, so that we know. But we're going to need a couple more of those. So let's rename this to height map image, and then we're going to need a couple more. So one for splat map, for green channel texture, blue, and then red as well. So I'm just going to call this splat map image. Splat map image is under splat map. So once you add these images, just make sure to change the property to actually copy to output folder. And this we can call by these names that we're going to use. So we're going to have grass, we're going to have rock, and we're going to have, what did I prepare? Dirt, I believe. So here it's grass, here it's rock, and here it's dirt. Good. And now we just need to create those textures. So similar to this here. Splat map. You can call it mix as well. So we need grass, but not map, just grass texture, rock texture, and we need dirt texture as well. And now we just need to, of course, assign them. Okay, let's go. So we have splat map and we use Splat Map image, texture 2D, Splat Map. And let's try to make use of it, just to see if it works. Of course, we're not going to see anything because our default texture was white by default, so actually we do see. So we might need to fix this, because here it shouldn't actually be this. But okay, at least it loaded. So we can set up the other ones, and then we're going to fix it. So we can say pipeline, so red. So we can set that to maybe dirt. The blue regions were really high, so we're going to set that to rock. So if we try now, okay, it's not working, right? Because one thing that I forgot, and I remembered why. We changed this, all of this properly, but we need to change our shader as well, right? Because we're loading unlit shader in our terrain unlit pipeline, so we can just change this to terrain. And now if I load it, we should either get error or it will work. It doesn't work, so it means file not found. Okay, so we need to copy it to our output folder, of course. So copy always. Rider on Linux has some error, so I need to set it to copy always. So now we're getting somewhere. It's not working yet, so we need to fix that a bit. So let's see what might be wrong in our shader. I think shader is fine. I don't see anything weird here, right? Because we're taking the red texture, which is fine, and then multiplying by mix R. So this is all right. Which means it's probably in our terrain render pipeline when we bind the textures. So must be here, right? Texture index is incremented. Let me see. Of course, I just remember what it might be. Here we assign textures, but I never initialize them, so I'm not sure what I'm pasting in here, you know. So let's actually do that. So grass texture, then we need rock texture, and make sure to just paste correct images. So I'm going to rely on Copilot here. So maybe now, let's try it. Let's give it a shot. Okay, and there we go. We have our terrain. Of course, this looks very ugly because our texture is stretched around the whole terrain. So we just need to do a bit of texture tiling. And I'm just going to remove this wireframe for now because it's a bit annoying. So here we were in our terrain. We can just set debug to false. Let's see it once more. As you can see, it's stretched across the whole terrain. We don't actually want to do that. So what we can do is just pass some texture tiling value, and then we can resize those textures to look a bit better. So let's do that now. So in our terrain, I can just add another value. So this is, maybe I should just leave a bit of space here because it's very hard to read actually. So we need uniform, right? Texture tiling. And that's vec2, right? And we just need to assign it, and we can just assign another value to our binding. So here we just multiply texture coords by texture tiling. Just to explain it. Okay. Right, because we're using texture tiling, so we can move our space to some other space, right? And then when you use this, you kind of just get repeating rows and columns from your texture. So what this allows us is basically to say, okay, we have like this chunk of geometry, and instead of texturing from 0 to 1, let's go from 0 to 16. That means that texture will repeat on that geometry 16 times. And that's what we're going to use. And now just we have to pass it. So back to our terrain and the pipeline, we're going to actually have to create that buffer from scratch. So we have buffer here. It's going to be very similar, but I'm just going to rename this to fragment, and we can create a uniform buffer. Sorry, uniform buffer. It's not matrix 4x4, right? It's vector 2. And it's texture tiling buffer. So we just need to find where to initialize it. Of course, we need the value as well, right? Private vector 2 float texture tiling. And by default, it can be 1, 1, right? And that means essentially no tiling, because it's just the value is multiplied by itself. If it's 1, 1, then. So we're going to need to do this, right? Public vector 2 float texture tiling. So we return texture tiling value, and here we set the texture tiling value, right? And then we need to update the buffer as well. So we need to create a buffer, texture tiling buffer. Our create resources is a good place for that. Of course, this is not unlit, this is now terrain. So I'm just going to fix this quickly, these descriptions. It's not super relevant, but can do that. So where we created fragment, right? Fragment by group layout, and just where we created for texture. So we just need to expand it by 1 because we're going to add that additional binding. So our 8 is new. So what do we sample here? Our where are you? Binding 8, exactly. Visibility is its fragment shader, and then we're sampling uniform buffer. All right, and then just change here as well, right? Now entry count is 9, and now we just need to fix binding as well. So once again, here it's 9. Texture by group entries, entry count here, fix it to 9, and just right over here, we can add this, right? So we add another binding, which is binding 8, and then we just need to pass it our buffer. And that's basically it. It should work now, so we can test it. And if I just go to our terrain scene, am I in terrain scene? I am. No, actually to our terrain. We can just say to our pipeline, texture tiling, we can set it to like 64. This won't look good, I think, because it will be too much detail, but we can try it. Let's see, maybe it works. It kind of works, as you can see. I don't like this value actually, because of the grass, so we can just change it to something more manageable, like 16, 16. So let's try that, and I am actually pleased with the results. So yeah, this is how you can do it. And that's it basically for this video. So as you can see, splat maps are really easy to do, and you can expand on splat map, right? You can expand it in a way. So just to comment this here, you can add another mixed texture, right? And then you can add another red channel, green channel 2, blue channel 2, right? And then just do this all over again for the second one, right? You're going to have additional color, right? Color is equal, so you need, for example, mix 2. I'm not going to do this because it's just waste of time at this point, but you can do it if you want. You can do mix 2, right? And then you need mix texture 2, mix sampler 2, right? And then you do all of this, but with the red sampler 2, red texture 2, for example. That's That's something that you can do on your own if you want to expand on this. And then you can just paint Splat Map. I actually generated this from tool, and I'm going to showcase this next time because I think it's good to know. So we're going to showcase some tools. Of course, they're commercial tools. So if you're doing something on your own, some of them are free. But if you want to like do commercial project, then you have to buy a license. It is what it is, but we can try them out. So we're going to do the next time. And just here, what I would also like to do, maybe you can do it, is just to add per channel texture tiling. So that's not a bad idea. I'm not going to do it for the sake of time, because you can do it on your own. So you just need to add, you can rename this to red texture tiling, then add another buffer which is green, and then which is blue. So you can expand this example that way as well. So just to recap real quickly, because it's actually kind of easy, we just had to pass a bunch of data around. What we did is we created our mixed texture, which is our splat map, right? And then we used that to actually multiply by any of the textures, and then therefore apply like some material or whatever, right? So for example, our red, I think it was dirt, then green was our grass, and then blue channel was our rock texture, right? And why did we decide on those values? Because the blue, as you can see here, it seems to me like it's higher up, so it's probably natural that it's rock. So here it's grassy regions and then dirt, but you can always flip that around, right, in your terrain. And in terrain, what we did is just expanded, in terrain or in the pipeline, we basically just expanded our bind group to actually handle those additional textures and additional buffer. That's very easy. And that's it basically. So this video was not too long. As you can see, this is very easy to do. And what you can play with is, like I mentioned, you can just expand on this. Add another mixed texture, add another mixed texture. You can have, like, I think the maximum number of textures is 16. So you can do this 4 times, I believe. I'm not sure, maybe there is some other limit. And then you can also expand this texture tiling to be per channel, right? Because this is obviously just per, this is immediately sets it for all of the channels, so that's not good. But as you can see, you can play with these values. As you can see here, it's repeating pattern because it's 128, so it's going to look ugly. So you can kind of play with these values as well. Okay, that's it for this video. So if you liked it, maybe like video, leave a comment, subscribe, and until next time. So next time we're going to cover this tool to generate actually terrain and height map and splat map and stuff like that. Okay, see you next time.